This right here is one of the most expensive Spider-Man games you can get right now. And for a, well, somewhat good reason. In between the years 2007 and 2012, we had a string of Spider-Man games where it just seemed like Spidey could never miss. You know, except for when he did. Taking a quick look back at said games. In 2010, we got Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, published by the people who did Best Buy Spider-Man before Insomniac, Activision, and Treyarch. Switching between Spider-Man Noir, Ultimate Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2099, and The Amazing Spider-Man, the tablet of order and chaos has been split into pieces and sent between each respective universe, and it's up to the 4 Spider-Men to restore balance. Then there was Spider-Man Edge of Time, a 2011 sequel to Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. The game had you alternate between Spider-Man 2099 and The Amazing Spider-Man while implementing some unique butterfly effect scenarios to the gameplay, having whatever you do in one's dimension affect the other, as the two deal with a multiversal threat once more. This next one here being my personal favorite of the bunch, The Amazing Spider-Man, released in 2012. The Amazing Spider-Man game took place after the events of the film, having Spider-Man attempt to stop a virus outbreak caused by a number of cross-species monsters created with Dr. Kirk Connor's research, escaping Oscorp and infecting residents of the Big Apple. Teaming with none other than his girlfriend Gwen Stacy, her and Spidey hope to develop a cure to save New York. And last but not least, the game of the hour, Spider-Man Web of Shadows. I noticed a surge of appreciation for this game in recent years alongside Shattered Dimensions. Obviously, you could chalk Shattered Dimensions' recent spike in popularity to the new Into the Spider-Verse films, on top of it being a fantastic game. But what about Web of Shadows? Maybe it's the upcoming release of Spider-Man 2 for the PS5, and it's got people reminiscent of the days of old and in search for that little cure for the symbiotic itch until it's released later this year. I mean, Spider-Man Web of Shadows was generally well received at its launch, and was the first trek into the next generation of consoles for the webhead alongside Spider-Man 3. So what makes this game so great? And what brought back this recent surge in its popularity? And let's assume that it's not because the opening is an iconic meme. Okay, maybe it is. From the ground up, this game had all the makings to be iconic. A sandbox open world for Spider-Man to play around in, fan favorite characters like Venom and Wolverine, and a combat system to make any fighting game pro blush. This isn't gonna be a whole deep dive into every nook and cranny of the game, but more of a fun look at a fan favorite. So let's go and revisit a beloved and expensive Spider-Man game, Spider-Man Web of Shadows. Now, I don't recollect a lot about this game, but I mean, right off the bat, we've got the whiniest Peter Parker.
MJ, I'm so worried.
MJ! Oh God, he sounds just like me. And the coolest Luke Cage.
You best play it cool, man.
Oh, I'm cool, man. I'm icy chill. After a flash of the future, seeing Luke Cage steal Peter's girl, Peter wakes up in the present being choked out by Venom in broad daylight.
No, Eddie.
Geez, it's Saturday here in New York already, huh? So after dishing out a little Ultimate Spider-Man action, throwing as many cars as possible at our enemy, and boy, throwing those cars never gets old, Venom disappears into the abyss that is the streets of New York. New York's like a Halloween corn maze, just with skyscrapers for corn and 3-foot rats wandering around. Hey, you get out of here! And with that, we finally get to play around in New York. Within these streets, we'll be able to take on a variety of different missions, like stopping petty crimes, or aiding other heroes like Luke Cage and Moon Knight with things like staking out bad guy informants to stop gangsters from turning the Big Apple into a war zone. The fact that we have heroes like Luke Cage alone is so cool, because it makes the Spider-Man game feel like it's a part of the Marvel Universe, having some of the heroes here doing their jobs. Doing any variety of these missions earns upgrade points for our suits, which you can spend on gaining new combos and web abilities. Oh yeah, I said suits. Spider-Man Web of Shadows at the very start of the game grants you the coolest option to switch voluntarily whenever you feel like between Peter's classic and symbiote suit, each garnering their own unique fighting styles and abilities to absolutely cremate the baddies in New York City. And of course, if you're like me, you always choose to be a bad boy and run the symbiote suit. Now, the game's not all sunshine and badassery, because one of the biggest downfalls of this game is that the longer you play, you realize that these missions have a tendency to throw you the same missions over and over with a different mission title. Does it get repetitive? Just a hair. With certain boss and story missions having you escorting or defending civilians to checkpoints, or specifically the Black Cat and Electro boss fights just dragging their heels to the finish for a little too long by having you chase them around the city, stop the fight, chase them around the city, stop and fight again. Usually having you do this in a sequence of 3s. The fights are cool, but I found myself around the 3rd chase just ready for it to be over. However, the game's combat really cushions the impact of that boredom, making each punch to these assholes a little less tedious. Wait a minute, why does this guy look so familiar?
What?
Now, probably the most important part of any Spider-Man game is the swinging. The missions and story can be as good as you want it to be, but if it's not fun to get there, then what's the point? I'd argue that Spider-Man Web of Shadows has some of the best web swinging in any Spider-Man game. I mean, I've seen YouTube videos that are straight up just people swinging through the city, showing off their web swinging skills like it's a Tony Hawk Pro Skater trick video, and it is just beautiful. I mean, look at him. He's fucking power sliding up a building. Up a building! Surprisingly enough, if you didn't think this game had more layers, the web swinging itself has a skill ceiling because of how much control is given to you whilst you swing. Like comboing it into a wall run or power slide right before you launch yourself off of a rooftop, all to transfer said momentum right back into a swing. Yeah, I'm spent. So maneuvering your way around New York is a 10 out of 10. It feels great, but most importantly, looks slick as hell. Now on to the game's story itself. The major conflict of the game is revealed to be that Venom's waging a full-scale symbiote war against New York, leaving symbiote egg sac things that turn anyone who's thrown into one into a symbiote across the city, and it's up to Peter to stop him. This game's whole aesthetic rocks that infamous and prototype styles, having semi-destructible environments and the whole save the city idea. At certain points of the game, you'll be given the option to make choices that will affect the story and your scale of good or evil. When helping Luke Cage with gang tensions in Harlem, we're introduced to our first option to make a choice. The choices are very black and white. You can walk a dark path to control or one of perseverance and growth. Each decision will dictate different outcomes and events in the story, as Peter meets familiar faces like Wolverine and Black Cat and old foes like Vulture and the Kingpin. Each of these villains has their own motivation. And most of their fates having different outcomes depending on which choices you make, really driving forward the influence of Peter's decisions. During the Black Cat section of the game, she confesses that she has never stopped having feelings for Peter and insists you both run off and do whatever you want, whenever you want, together. And of course, because I'm a good noodle, I chose to stay faithful to MJ.
I can't do that. And you know it, Felicia.
Can't or won't?
Same thing.
Maybe in another lifetime. Wolverine, on the other hand, depending on which choice you make for him, decides whether or not later on in the game, once Wolverine becomes infected with the symbiote, you'll either rip the symbiote from his body or rip the legs from his body. Yeah! Just straight up pick him up over your head and rip him in half like Hulk Hogan hulking it up for the crowd. It doesn't kill Logan, just pisses the guy off, but I feel like this scene was worth a mention. Choosing the evil option doesn't even always mean Peter will do something drastically evil. Sometimes, all it is bringing out the worst in the people around him by making a bad choice himself. Like I said earlier, these choices are very black and white. You never know what the outcome of Peter's decision will be until you do it. All you know is that one choice is good and the other bad. Never the extent or how far he'll go with his actions. Being given the choice to carve your own path as Spider-Man was a first for him in video game form, and it brought viewers and players to a new crossroads with the characters and a new level of depth too. I find it that when you're able to make decisions right alongside your favorite hero, it brings you closer to them. Rather than going through a predetermined story where you view a character's growth, this allows you to feel the repercussions and weight of your decisions, and grow with them rather than watching them grow. And of course, that's not to say that lessons and connections aren't made by experiencing a story. It's why we all love to watch movies and see our favorite characters have experiences and trials. It's a way to more healthily and safely live vicariously through someone. It's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people love Spider-Man in the first place. He's not perfect. He was thrown into the world of being a hero, and he does it all while trying to balance his personal life, a job, and his hero work, all while trying to make the right decisions along the way. Superman is a great hero because he's a role model we can all look up to and aspire to be like, knowing what decision is right and wrong and having the strength to do it no matter how hard the right decisions are to make. Spider-Man's a role model because he shows us that even if we make the wrong decisions and fall flat on our face, we'll still be okay. It may be hard, but in the end, we'll all be okay. Spider-Man Web of Shadows is all of this, definitely more on a grandiose scale, of course, with the whole symbiote zombie apocalypse going on and all, but even with all of its faults, it still made it out okay. Whether you're a Spider-Man fan or not, you really get to find a new appreciation for the old webhead with what he endures within such a short amount of time in this game. So if you're looking for that dose of Spider-Man to fill the void until Spider-Man 2 arrives, or if you're looking to dig out an old game you haven't played in a while, give this one a shot, and spin out your own Web of Shadows.